You know, most of the time when we follow global news, our attention goes straight to the biggest headlines, wars, conflicts, and political speeches. But sometimes, the real story is what's happening quietly in the background. And right now, something important seems to be unfolding. We're seeing tensions inside NATO, serious concerns about America's most advanced fighter jet, and even signs that some longtime U.S. allies might be slowly rethinking their position. Now, none of this is happening all at once in a dramatic way, but when you connect the dots, it starts to paint a very interesting picture. So, let's take a closer look at what's going on. First, let's talk about Donald Trump and his recent comments. In a speech, Trump openly criticized several U.S. allies, including France, the UK, Japan, South Korea, and NATO members in general. And he didn't sugarcoat it. He suggested that some allies have not been supportive enough, especially during times when the U.S. expected cooperation. At one point, he even questioned whether NATO would actually be there when it truly matters, basically saying that in a major conflict, support might not come to the way people expect. That's a strong statement, because NATO, at its core, is built on the idea of collective defense. The idea that if one member is attacked, others will stand with them. So, when a former U.S. president publicly questions that commitment, it naturally raises concerns. He also made some remarks that sounded more like criticism of how slow or hesitant certain countries are when it comes to taking action. And overall, his message seemed to be this: the U.S. is doing a lot, and not everyone else is pulling their weight. Now, whether you agree with that or not, statements like these don't just stay political. They have real-world effects. Markets reacted, oil prices moved, and more importantly, it adds another layer of uncertainty in already tense global conditions. Now let's shift to the second major issue, the F-35 fighter jet program. This is one of the most expensive military projects in history, costing around $2 trillion over its lifetime. The F-35 is not just a fighter jet. It's often described as a flying computer. It relies on extremely advanced software to manage everything from targeting to communication to coordination with other systems. So naturally, software upgrades are critical. But here's where the problem starts. Recent reports suggest that the latest upgrade, known as TR-3, has faced multiple issues. We're talking about stability problems, missing capabilities, and ongoing technical deficiencies. In simple terms, the upgrade hasn't been working as smoothly as expected. And that's a concern, because these upgrades are supposed to enhance performance, not hold things back. There are also concerns about delays. The program has struggled to meet timelines, and progress has been slower than planned. Now, this isn't entirely unusual for complex military systems. Delays do happen, but when the world's most advanced fighter jet is involved, expectations are obviously much higher. Another issue that's getting attention is cybersecurity. Because the F-35 is so heavily dependent on software and connected systems, it also creates potential vulnerabilities. If those vulnerabilities are exploited, it could lead to serious risks like data breaches, system disruptions, or interference with missions. And while there's no confirmed large-scale incident publicly detailed, even the possibility raises questions. There were also reports during the conflict that an F-35 may have been hit while operating in contested airspace. Now, it's important to say that not all details around that are fully confirmed, but the mere suggestion is significant because the F-35 has long been considered extremely difficult to target. So, when something like that comes up, it naturally gets attention. Now here's where things start to connect. These concerns aren't just being discussed inside the U.S., they're being noticed by allies as well. And some of those allies are starting to rethink their defense strategies. For example, Canada has begun reviewing its deal to purchase F-35 jets. Switzerland has reduced its planned order due to rising costs. Portugal is still undecided and is openly considering European alternatives instead. So what we're seeing is not necessarily a rejection, but definitely a reconsideration. Countries are asking questions. They're looking at costs, reliability, long-term support, and political factors, and they're exploring other options. At the same time, there's another development that's worth paying attention to. Some countries are starting to strengthen defense cooperation among themselves, without relying as heavily on the United States. In particular, Canada and several Nordic countries have been discussing closer coordination, especially in the Arctic region. This includes things like increasing defense production, improving interoperability, and working more closely on security challenges. Now, this doesn't mean they're cutting ties with the U.S., but it does suggest a shift toward more regional cooperation, a kind of let's also build our own capabilities approach. And honestly, from their perspective, that makes sense. Relying on a single partner for critical defense needs always comes with risks, whether those risks are technical, political, or strategic. So, when you step back and look at the bigger picture, a pattern starts to emerge. You have strong political rhetoric creating tension. You have technical concerns affecting confidence in major defense systems. And you have allies quietly exploring alternative paths. Individually, each of these things might not seem like a big deal, but together, they point towards something more significant. Now, just to keep things balanced, it's important to say that none of this means the U.S. is suddenly losing its global position. The United States is still one of the most powerful countries in the world, both militarily and economically, and alliances like NATO are still very much intact. But at the same time, global relationships are not static. They evolve. They respond to pressure, perception, and changing realities. And what we might be seeing right now is one of those gradual shifts. Personally, I think this is one of those situations where perception plays a huge role. Even small doubts about reliability, about commitment, about coordination can slowly build over time. And once those doubts are there, countries naturally start thinking about backup plans, not because they want to break alliances, but because they want to reduce risk. And in today's world, that's understandable. So, to sum it all up, we have rising tensions in political messaging. We have ongoing concerns about a key military program. And we have allies exploring more independent or regional strategies. Nothing has dramatically changed overnight, but things are definitely moving. And it'll be interesting to see where this goes in the coming months.